continuation of
Right,
the
right.
1991 war, rather than a pure case of prevention,
Right.
as the use of force against North Korea
Yeah.
or Iran would
Yeah.
have been.
I
That
mean-
isn't to say it was justified, because there were inspectors on the
Sure,
ground.
sure.
The aim could have been achieved in some other way.
Sure,
But I think it was a mistake of the Bush administration to talk about an axis of evil in which
sure.
action against Iraq was made parallel to action
Yeah.
against North Korea
Yeah,
and Iran,
yeah.
who are not in the same situation.
Yeah, I agree. It was a mistake, and I think, of course, what you would need to do is to make the case that they're in material breach of the terms of that ceasefire, and that therefore and that in and of itself is a legitimate casus belli, and make that kind of argument. So I'm just nodding basically to your intervention, Michael.
I think it's worth pointing out that we did respond to Saddam's crimes with the use of force short of war.
That's right. Yeah.
The no-fly zone and
That's
the
right.
embargo.
That's right.
The no-fly zone produced a change of regime in Kurdistan, and certainly precluded a massacre in Kurdistan. So there are arguments to be made about the use of force, preemptive and preventive, short of war.
Sure.
And those may be enormously important arguments in the coming
Right.
period.
Right. Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, and in a longer version of this, I include some of that. But thank you, Michael. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for very stimulating points that you had. I want to go back to the question of reasons, moral reasons for intervening. I think the two that were discussed here were protected innocents, that are imminently threatened, like large numbers of blacks. The genocide model.
Yeah.
And the other one was, punishing Saddam for the horrible things, genocide.
Yeah.
But I think there's one reason that is overlooked in the debate, especially in Iraq case.
Okay.
And that is, I think you mentioned in passing, that's why I wanted. And
sure.
that is the constant fear and terror experienced by every single Iraqi person during 40 years of rule of this monster.
Yeah.
Right? This is not about it. People that talk about intervention talk about, it's genocide. If it's not genocide, you're going to go in, or something else, or preventive, or the other reasons that actually preventive use of force. But they overlook this other reason, which is to overthrow a tyrant. Now, that I'm not suggesting that that's a sufficient reason to do it.
Right, I understand.
I'm not making that point. I think I'm supporting your point that actually this may be another reason. People forgot about all the mass graves that were every week the commission was finding.
Right.
I mean, this to me is a reason, especially if the Iraqis welcome the action. I'm not sure if that's true. I think it is true, but it is disputed.
They seem to.
So if this is true, then I don't think President Bush, in fact, made the efforts of people that liked it, because the word evil did not refer to the evil of wanting to attack us only, or the savage's weapons. The evil referred, I think, the way I read it, principally to the evil nature of the regime, which is a different.
Yeah, I think it was about the nature of regimes. I'm wary about too ready recourse to the language of evil. I mean, I think the language of evil is quite appropriately used at certain points, but anyway, that's a different discussion. Let me just bracket that for the moment. Certainly, some of my own thinking about Iraq was shaped by some discussions I had in London with Iraqis in exile about the nature of the regime, and some Iraqis in exile in Washington and the nature of the regime. So you're quite right about the fear and the sort of systematic daily brutality, the capriciousness of the regime, the horrible costs borne by people. You meet folks whose families have been wiped out, so on and so forth, and all those things weigh heavily, clearly on one's thinking. And there it does raise some questions, does it not, about, and it's hard to talk about these if one isn't oneself in the situation, or to make judgments about it, because one's not going through what these people have gone through or are going through. One You know, do we want to see evidence of some general sort of, not an uprising necessarily physically, but some general antipathy to the regime internally, some general sense that this regime is loathed. And it's very difficult to, in circumstances where people are terrified, to say, well, they need to show us, you know, that they're really opposed to this regime. And when they've demonstrated that to our satisfaction, you know, then we've got what we need in order to intervene against that particular regime. It's a very hard thing to require. So judgments are always, again, we're always making these judgments in the absence of certain evidence. But it does, let me just, and then I know it's time for me to stand down and to have a little break before the panel, but let me just alert us to the fact that this speaks again to an issue that has really come into focus now, especially given what's happening in the Middle East and so on, and that is the question about the nature of regimes. And that it's not enough just to talk about the fact that you have a state here, a sovereign state, a member in good standing of the United Nations, but you have regimes of a particular sort that violate systematically certain minimal norms of what we would consider just basic, simple decency. That's why I speak of minimal decency as a standard for regimes. You know, not a fully operating human rights respecting democracy, but just some minimal decency. And to the extent that that's violated routinely, are we obligated in any way to do something about that? If so, what? And I think Michael's quite right. There are all kinds of things one can do short of war. And that you can't go to war because you say this particular regime is violating norms of minimal decency. That has to be something that is part of something else that is not being dealt with effectively in another way. But there are all kinds of actions one can take. This question, let me just end with this. You know, I had no idea when I was first working on this issue how exigent it was going to be. And this question is before us now, you know, since the administration, the Obama administration, has said that only Gaddafi out of office, leaving, is acceptable, which really is a regime change kind of argument. And I have a hunch what everyone thinks of that, and I'm sure it will come up in our deliberations over the next couple of days, that's an argument I think we're going to hear more of, given the situation that we're now in. So with that, I think I should stand down and give you a chance to have some coffee and
Very remarkable. Small gift for you.
oh my.
And we thank you for
Sure,
your
you bet.
stimulating presentation
Thank you.
and those great answers to the questions. This is a small gift from the Naval
Thank you so
Academy
much.
Stockdale Center.
Wow.
It's a moral compass.
I love surprises. This is great. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much. I
ma'am.
appreciate it. Thank you.